So, you interested in becoming a writer? I'm going to talk about 5 things I wish I would have known before I started writing. Nerd Nation. All right, today we're going to talk about becoming a writer, the real journey, the real numbers, the full picture. So, I'm Sterling Nixon. I'm author since 1999, or I started writing since 1999. I predominantly write science fiction and fantasy. Been writing for 25 years. And I've written a number of books, such as the Nickel Brickleby series, the ACADIA series, 7 Days, Gladiators of the Naumachia, and a bunch of others. So here's some wild facts about the book world. There are about 3 million books published every single year in the US. About 81% of Americans want to write a book, at least at some point in their lives. But only 1% of books ever become profitable, and it's actually much less than 1%. So 99% plus of books never turn a profit. Writing is hard, but the 1% who make it, they never quit. The writers who succeed aren't the most talented necessarily. They're the ones who never stop learning. Okay, so something that I think is really important, not only in writing, but I think in every facet of your life, is really figuring out the why you are doing things. Because when things get really hard, that is going to be what you lean on to keep you going through it, or to keep you on the right track. So why are you doing this? Ask yourself, if you want to become a writer, is it for fun, fame? Tell an important story to make your mom cry those happy tears? What is it that it appeals to you, right? And defining that success will also define how you should or can approach it. All right, do you love what you're working on? If writing feels like torture every single day, perhaps maybe a different story, maybe a different genre, it should be invigorating, right? That sort of excitement bleeds through on the pages. The best authors can't wait to get back to their characters. And your why is the fuel. When things get hard, and they will, it's the only thing, or can be the only thing that keeps you going. Okay, know thyself. Socrates said this, and I think it's really important to know your limitations, your strengths, and how to work with yourself, right? A lot of times we think about how to work with a difficult person, but putting in a frame of how to work with yourself. For example, if there are things that demotivate you, setting things up so you are successful. Perhaps like you're going to write 2 chapters and then reward yourself with X, Y, or Z. So I started writing when I was 12, and there is a fun little toy maker. I think they're out of Germany, called Playmobil. And I was 12, my brother was 7. We were playing Playmobil with each other. We had this really cool, intricate story developed with a lot of side characters, adventures, and things like that. And it became really impactful. And at one point, my mom walked in and saw both of us crying, and she's just wondering, what is going on here? And that story had become so impactful to us that it had kind of hit us on a different level. And from that moment on, I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to tell awesome, powerful stories that inspire. So the first story I wrote was actually inspired by that experience, called The Bond of Two Brothers, right? And it was a fantasy book. And it was a lot of fun to write, put together, but it had a lot of issues too. So it ended up being 400,000 words. And for those who don't know, that is a behemoth of a book. That's about 800 pages. You're talking like your Les Mis sort of original, unabridged version. Actually, I think that's even bigger than that. And it was just a beast. For a first-time author, typically, or first-time book, you typically want to be somewhere between 80, 120,000 words. 120,000 words is actually quite a bit, probably even less than that. And the reason being is because the bigger the book, the more editing it takes, the more copy editing, the longer their narrator has to narrate it. It just represents an increasing cost with a diminished return. So my book, the book that I'd written, it had all sorts of plot holes and plot problems, inconsistent characters, repetitive sequences. It was an editing nightmare, but it was also incredibly creative. So I worked on this book for 6 years, and it was never published. 6 years of work, never saw a bookshelf. And for me, my perspective, it was worth every minute. So what it built. The first draft completed was by age 19. It was a huge, or the first draft I completed was at age 19. It was a huge confidence booster. I had proof of concept that I could take a book and consistently push on to complete it and have it published, right? That was a big fulfillment of what I wanted to accomplish, and it helped me out and boosted my confidence quite a bit. So I learned how to tell a good story. I also identified real weaknesses to the story, the planning, the editing, conclusions. I started to get away from organic writing and go to more of a structured, so I could have those really strong plot moments happen that really, where readers really have a strong emotional impact. So I discovered, and I still believe this, and be interested to see if people disagree with me or they agree with me. But I believe the strongest, most important part of a book is the characters, right? You could take characters, really good dynamic characters, and you can put them in any sort of scene or plot points, sci-fi, throw them in a desert, and you will have a compelling story, because I think that characters really make a compelling story. Not that other elements aren't important, plot, setting, and things like that, but I think the most important is characters. So what went wrong with this book? I didn't understand the industry. The novel was far too long. I had planned it. I just started writing one day. It went organically written. I would hop on, write several chapters, and didn't really have a clear, concise direction. Didn't know what professional editing actually required. There was a lot of mechanics that I was naive on, how things were supposed to work, just with the basic kind of plumbing of writing itself. So I had a weak plot progression and underdeveloped character arcs. Those moments that would have been really strong were very much diminished and watered down because I didn't know how to necessarily set them up. And no understanding of what made content genuinely unique or genuinely interesting. So, but the big takeaway is that failure that teaches is not failure. And I really do believe that. The first novels that don't sell are paying tuition. They aren't wasting your time. I learned a lot from that. And I don't think there's any amount of classes or conferences that I could attend that could substitute the learning that took place in writing that novel that took 6 years that never went anywhere, right? Here is kind of my path when it went to writing. First novel, I began in 1999. I was age 16. It was never published. But I did complete it by the age of 22. It took 6 years of work, 3 years to write it, and another 3 years of editing and changing things around, trying to make the story work. At the end of the day, it was just too much going on there that needed to be corrected, and it wasn't workable. So after that, I decided, okay, I'm going to learn more about the mechanics and how to develop story and growth and things like that. Meanwhile, I was still writing, right? So I was writing in as well as attending these conferences, trying to hone my craft. So in 2009, The Sea Kings of Rome was published. It was my first publication. It was fantastic. It will always have an important part in my heart. But it had some editing issues. It had some story issues. I had progressed substantially as a writer, but still had a lot of way and a lot of growth. So in 2014, I released a post-apocalyptic book, which is a vastly wild, different genre. The Sea Kings of Rome, excuse me, The Sea Kings of Rome is a historical fiction, whereas 7 Days is a post-apocalyptic, end of the world, kind of doomsday prepper feel to it. And it was wildly successful. But again, it still needed better editing. I thought that I had gotten to a level where I was really good at editing, but it still needed substantially more. It also had a disjointed release between the audiobook, the ebook, and the soft cover and hardcover. And so that created some issues with it. So in 2018, I continued to write, hone my craft, get better all the time. I wrote, and ACADIA was published in 2018. It was well edited and it had a timed release, but it lacked a marketing apparatus. And each step along the way, I was learning more. I was becoming better. I was honing my craft. And then in 2019, something changed. I decided I really want to master this. I want to become good at it. I want this to be my primary profession. And so I was all in, and I started writing books at a incredible pace. In 2020, I believe I had 3 novels published, um, 2 from Earthworks, and then the second book of the ACADIA series. And I was churning them out. Now, even though I was churning them out at a much quicker pace, I wanted to maintain, and I did maintain, that high quality and ever increasing quality of books. And I think that is critically important. I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. Okay, each book or challenge brought a new lesson. Each lesson produced a different piece of mastery. Okay, where I really started hitting my stride was Nickel Brickleby. Nickel Brickleby is a young adult fiction series. It's about Nickel, and he steps into a world that is a city underneath the earth that is a magical realm. It's called Earthworks, and there's all sorts of fun creatures like orcs and ogres and gnomes and goblins and beast heads and all these different cast of fun characters. But I also wanted to focus on character interactions, because to me, a good character is everything, right? You could take these same characters from the Nickel Brickleby series, take all the magical elements out of them, throw them in the desert, and I still think there would be a fantastic, compelling story that would develop behind it. So I continue to improve my writing. So this is critically important. A lot of people, a lot of authors fall into the trap thinking the more books I put out, the more content I have, the more possibility and opportunity I have to make in each book. And I would strongly advise not taking that approach. At the end of the day, these books have your name on the front of them. I think putting out the best quality books that you possibly can should be every author's priority. You could publish 10, 15, 20 books a year, and if it doesn't have that quality, it doesn't have that strength, it doesn't have that depth or that moving plot, honestly, I don't think that is as much valuable as putting out one book maybe every couple years that is your heart and soul that you poured into it and you poured over it, making it that much better. Even if it doesn't sell, it only sells 10, 12, a couple dozen copies, a few thousand copies, that is much more successful because of how powerful you have made the story, right? And how you've developed it. I think that's a much better approach. Okay, I had a friend make this for me. I'll give him a shout out in the comments below. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was really fun for me to see these imaginations that came from my mind put onto a screen and sort of develop the story. So this was an ad that he made for me, and I really appreciated it. I thought I'd share with you guys, and this is kind of the gives you a little bit more feel of what Earthworks and Nickel Brickleby is about.
For honor and glory!
So it was really fun to see that and hear the music in the background, and it just, made me feel good as an author that these things, this world that I had created, was represented on a screen, right? So that was a lot of fun for me. All right, so there's 2 things that you can do right now to become a writer. The first is pretty easy. You're probably already doing it, but maybe even a more conscious movement on it, or conscious thought process behind it, is to read, listen, consume, and analyze everything. Every interaction you have in your life is a story, right? Analyze everything you consume. Everything is telling a story. Movies, books, audiobooks, even interactions at the grocery store. Somebody is running to get that last item of the string cheese for whatever reason. There's a story behind that, right? And there's motivations for the way the person is acting, that the way that they are. Ask yourself, why is this working? Why is it not working? Some of the best ways to develop a really good story is by reading a bad one and saying to yourself, what isn't working here? Like, it has all the elements that in a story that I typically like. What is going off the rails that is creating an issue? And some of that analysis will help you develop your stories that much better, so you can avoid those pitfalls. Keep a notebook of your descriptions, idiomatic phrases, cool plot points, moments that you really felt an emotional impact. Write those down and reference them later on when you're writing. Ask yourself, how could I have done it better? The next thing to do is to actually start writing. I was an English major, absolutely loved it. One of the big reasons I became an English major is so I could be surrounded by people that want to write books, because I thought that was a great place to be, and it really was. But I was surprised at how often somebody told me that they wanted to be a writer, and yet they weren't writing, or they hadn't ever written anything, right? If you want to be a writer, the best way to start is just to start writing. Don't wait to think that until you are ready, because honestly, you will never be ready, right? And honestly, you will learn so much quicker if you are writing these elements than just learning about them, right? And especially for kinesthetic learners, individuals that learn by doing, this is a powerful tool, right? So you can go to all the conferences and you can learn all the classes you attend at college on how to write a good book. And those are great things to do, but you will never be able to master the craft or be able to progress in the craft if you don't write yourself. Now, that's my personal opinion, but I do feel very strongly about that. Always look to improve, even if you are at the top of your game. It's unfortunate you see a big time author, they sell millions of copies, but they never continually improve on their craft, and they just kind of plateau. And then the next book they come out, the market's shifted or it's pivoted, and it just doesn't sell as good. Whereas there are some authors, let's say like Brandon Sanderson, that people go cross genre because he wrote it, right? Which shows you that it isn't necessarily the genre, but it is his writing skill, and he is trying to progress as a writer. Becoming a writer is a journey, not a destination. You're not going to wake up one day realizing that you are a phenomenal writer. Ask yourself, how could I have done it better? Now, this is the same point on both of these sides. So as you're writing, constantly ask yourself, how could I have improved that? What steps could I have made this moment more emotionally impactful? Everything in life, so here's the life principle. Everything in life is telling a story. Learn from every interaction you have with the world. Everything is an opportunity to learn. The entire world is a classroom. And also, another important point is learning ceases when you know the answer. Master your craft. Now, the first sentence was said by Gordon B. Hinckley, not the second sentence, but I completely believe this. Learning ceases when you know the answer. When you think you've mastered writing, that is when you will stop progressing as a writer. And a lot of times the market will leave you behind. So master your craft and then continually get better. All right. You are not just a writer. Nowadays, you do so much more. And this is important to know, eyes wide open, getting into this. So I won't go through all this. You can pause, you can look at it. I mean, this is knowledge that is out there. Even individuals that are traditionally published nowadays, the market has shifted so much that a lot of those individuals, it isn't enough to put out a great book and have your own marketing team. If you notice, like individuals like Brendan Sanderson or Pierce Brown, they are getting much more involved in their social media, and they're trying to connect with their audiences on a deeper level, right? So the market has shifted in a lot to accommodate that, and individuals, readers, are looking for that experience nowadays. So writing isn't just writing a good book. So eyes wide open going into it. These are things that you're going to have to get good at, and you don't have to do it all right away. You just do it one step at a time. You master one and then start getting better at all of them one by one. Okay, so here's the 5 lessons that we talked about, 5 lessons that I want to leave you with. Lesson number 1, before the journey gets hard, decide why you're on it. Know thyself. Why are you doing this thing? What's your inspiration? And in the hard times, you can lean on that to help you push you through that moment or that challenge or the fact that your book's not selling or whatever is going on with your journey. Failure that teaches is not failure. Just because you had a book that you wrote that didn't get picked up by a traditional publisher or didn't sell doesn't mean it is a failure. It is a learning opportunity. The first novels or challenges that don't sell are paying your tuition. You're not wasting time. Everything in life is telling a story. Learn from every interaction you have with the world. Number 4, learning ceases when you know the answer. Continually master your craft, even when you think you've gotten to a good level where you've developed your skill set. And then finally, each book or challenge brought a new lesson or brings you a new lesson. Each lesson produces a different piece of mastery. Master one step, move on to the next, keep learning in all the things that you're progressing on. Okay, so writing has become increasingly more difficult the last several years as things have become more competitive. Books have become, in my opinion, exceptionally well done nowadays. And even though that is the case, or that is my perspective, over the last 25 years, I've had more success now than I ever have. And I don't believe that that's because the market's become easier. I really believe that that is because the price I was willing to pay has gone up. I'm willing to pay a greater price to achieve this goal. So that's all I have for you today. But if you want to see more videos like this, and I plan on putting some more out, please like, comment below, subscribe. Check out sterlingnixon.com. You can see what I'm working on. Check out my merch page. You can get some cool t-shirts and things like that, mouse pads that you might find interesting. All right, here's the comment for here's the comment for today. So tell me, has writing become harder over the last 10 years? What do you guys think? I'd love to hear your comments, especially about from one of those seasoned authors out there, or if you're just starting to become a writer and start getting your books out there. I'd love to hear from you. Also, I'm still doing the Race to 1,000 campaign. I'm trying to get 1,000 trying to get 1,000 reviews on my latest book that was released, ACADIA, and I'd love to have you guys participate. I'm giving out the first 2 audiobooks for free, and I'd love to get some of your feedback and reviews on it. To find out more about the Race to 1,000 campaign, just see the comments below. There will be a link there. You can click that. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys. I appreciate you hanging out with me, and see you in the next video.